Alright, welcome back, boys. Welcome back. We're here for another chapter of the Ultimate Iron Man adventure. As you can see, we're down here still in the Red Dragon cave part of the Korand Underground Dungeon. Slowly grinding away at the prayer XP. Now, there is a bit of a problem with this method that has cropped up. Problem in the same way that my wallet is too bulky full of cash and my enormous penis is always getting in the way of everything. And that is that we're so strong that we're killing the red dragons just far too quickly now for it to be the passive AFK activity that it once was. So at 94 range, now, and this is when the void armor really comes into its own and has comparatively decent DPS compared to something like Dragonhide. The Amulet of Glory does also make a pretty noticeable difference between picking up bones, running over to the Hide Tanner, and the Bone Altar, alking all the drops. There's always something to be doing. We still have 85 prayer as the overall goal, which is the highest stat requirement for any of the quests or diaries, since you need it for the Desert Elite. It's a bit of an arbitrary goal, because I'm still quite a ways off from getting a lot of the other stat requirements for the Desert Elite. And even when we do hit that 85 prayer, it's still going to be a while before it can be completed. But you know, it just feels like a nice round number, and I've got to pick a goal or a stopping point, so it may as well be it. And having a high prayer level just helps with so many things on the account. Slayer, want to do fight caves, quest bosses, any sort of PVM. The mage XP, not as much as the range, but it's starting to add up too. We're already up to level 82, making good money from alking all the D-hides and the other drops. They drop rune swords, addy, plate bodies. Sitting at something like 15 mil, sitting in the LMS coffer. And that's even after paying to get to 85 construction. Haven't decided what the money is going to be for yet. A bit like the prayer, there's no real downside to having more GP. All this is to say that although I probably will be moving on from the prayer grind kind of soonish, after hitting level 85 especially, there isn't any huge rush considering how many other perks there are. And because we're going to be hanging down in the cave a while longer, I decided it was time to complete a couple other tasks that will help the overall account, and I'd want to do anyway, but will also provide a bit of a quality of life upgrade for the here and now. And that's going to be the focus of this episode. We did get the upgraded pool for the player-owned house. Dr. Jekyll finally did decide to come through and convert the last of those tour stalls to stamina pots. And I also had just heaps of super restores and prayer potions from all the grubby chests I've been opening. And that allowed us to upgrade all the way up to the fancy rejuvenation pool, which restores special attack, prayer, any lowered stat, and most importantly, run energy. Basically everything except for hit points, which is the final upgrade, and you need the ornate rejuvenation pool for. Now that one requires anti-venoms, which need at least 87 herblore, and even if that's boosted, that's 83 herblore. So we're still quite a ways from that. But I honestly can't overstate how nice it is to be able to restore run energy every time you head back to the player-owned house, especially with the ornate jewelry box and the teleport nexus. The house is sort of coming into its own as like a centralized hub for getting around the game. And now every time I head back there, I can also get full run energy as well. Just good for questing, good for clue scores, good for pretty much everything. Now, to go along with the pool upgrade and sort of another nice upgrade for the house is getting the fairy ring, which will mean I can teleport within a few tiles of a fairy ring at any time. Building the fairy ring in the house only needs 82 construction, so I've got the level. But you need to have finished Fairy Tale Part 2 and not just started it like you need to do to be using the fairy rings. And last time I blew off the quest as soon as I'd done the part where you get access. So that's what I'm going to be doing now. I don't know what kind of friggin' prodigy, genius, wonder savant children were playing this game in 2005. But to figure out how to get there, you need to take this code left behind in Fair Enough in her trashed house, and you work out what it says by comparing like the coded hieroglyphics to the welcome sign that they have hanging up at the Cosmic Rune Crafting altar. And that gives you the correct order of fairy rings that you need to visit to enter the hideout. I did mess up the first few times I tried, much to the amusement of this bot splashing magic on the Penguin Island. But we made it through eventually, where we're instructed by the fairy resistance to brew up the special potion to rejuvenate the unconscious fairy queen by mixing Gorak claws with space flowers. Once resuscitated with the fairy queen, you begin plotting the counterattack to take back Xanaris from the fairy godfather. This completes the quest, and it leaves on an epic cliffhanger, which has been building suspense for the last 18 years and counting. Not that that really matters though, we've got better things to focus on than the internal political turmoil of the fairy kingdom. And after a quick reunion with our friend the Tar Monster over on Fossil Isle, we can go back, purchase the last material we need, which is the enchantment of Fairy Fix-It, and we can now add the fairy ring to the player-owned house. Now, they also somewhat recently changed the model for the fairy rings. So they've got like this shaft of light, little fairies circling around instead of just like the static circle that they had on the ground before. Although this is different and change is scary and bad, you could say it makes it a bit more fairy-like, actually having the fairies, interacting with the rings. But on the other hand, you could also say that part of the magic of the old models is that the rings were just like these colourful circles on the ground. If you didn't know how the fairy magic worked, you'd just overlook them, and only those empowered with the mystical knowledge and understood what to look for and how to use them could unlock the potential. There's not a whole lot of mystery if the fairies are just hovering around. But the click box is meant to be bigger and more accurate, so from a strictly utilitarian perspective, it's a definite upgrade. And there is one in my house now, which is very, very nice. Alright, now the second upgrade that I wanted to make was the completion of the Varrock Medium diary. And this is because we're still getting a lot of potions from opening all the grubby chests, and I'm keeping them all. And the best way to store potions on an Ultimate Iron Man is to decant them into the 1-dose servings through the service offered at the Grand Exchange, thereby noting them in the process. And now, at the moment, every time I teleport to Varrock, I end up near the fountain, and you gotta make this arduous trek all the way up to Bob Barter every single time. However, completion of the Varrock Medium diary, you can set the default teleport to Varrock to take you right to the Grand Exchange, which is only a few tiles away from the decanter himself. And I already had all of the stat requirements for the Varrock Medium. There were just a couple of remaining quests. The classic Gertrude's cat was a quick and easy one. You just need to bribe this little shit to tell you where the cat is hiding. You bring over milk and sardines and play at animal rescue. And then luckily I'd already done Garden of Tranquility and Creature of Frankenstein to get the Ring of Chaos, which you need to brainwash Gertrude into allowing you to retake toys as a consumer and pick the coloured cat of your choosing. The next quest needed the completion of A Soul's Bane, which, as an aside, I honestly think it might be one of my favourite quests in the game. It's short and sweet, as well as being combat focused, which essentially means you just solve all the puzzles in it by fucking blasting it with the rune crossbow until everything dies. And beyond that, if you want to get a bit more analytical, it also gets, creative with how it depicts different stages of despair, confusion, hopelessness, rage. And at the end, you need to fight a giant worm boy. So just all around a good experience. You start out talking to this grieving woman near the entrance of this massive chasm, sort of near the Varrock lumber mill. She tells you that her son went missing 20 years ago, and she and her husband recently decided to do something about it. So you go down into the chasm to look for this woman's family. And then they have a bunch of different sort of themed rooms that you need to make your way through. First of all is anger. So you take out all your impotent virgin nerd rage by just stabbing a unicorn and other beasts. And I can only imagine what a friggin' badass you would have felt back at the time of the release, because you're hitting 65s, or maybe not quite that high, but in the 50s, level 30. You're 10 years old. That's going to blow your mind. The game takes a massive genre shift from bloodthirsty action to sort of atmospheric horror and suspense. You need to tiptoe through this cave fear, keeping your composure as you face off against the mother of all jump scares. Then after going on a bad acid trip through the Room of Confusion, you come to a roadblock in this bleak room full of hopeless creatures. And after trying and failing to cheer them up with a festive jig, I offered them 20 milligrams of serotonin uptake inhibitors to be taken daily. Didn't go for this either. And then you proceed to just blast them full of ammunition until the hopelessness cleared and you get a bridge across the room, thus proving definitively that the most effective cure to depression is just a broad bolt shot from a rune crossbow taken directly to the skull. Then the worm boy, the boss of the labyrinth, gets a similar treatment, and it's equally effective. After you riddle him full of arrows, he comes back to his senses and has a touching reunion with his long-lost father, and they return to the surface together. Then after the completion of the quest, we're able to go back down to the training arena within the chasm, which is the other diary task, and just like that, we can teleport right where we need to be, which is just going to help us out for for the rest of the game, really. It's going to always be handy to be able to teleport next to Bob Butter, but especially while we're still getting grubby keys pretty regularly and have to decant the potions away. So those are some nice quality of life upgrades as we continue forward with this increasingly less passive but still undeniably effective prayer training journey that we're currently on. Alright, that's it for this episode. Sincere thank you for anyone who tuned in, and I'll see you in the next one.